Because until such time as you have educated yourself and understand that knowledge is power, and this is very, very important, because as long as you don't understand how you are being used, how you're being lied to and mistreated, deceived, you're never going to be able to get out of the mess we're in. Knowledge is the key. And unfortunately, too many people are preoccupied with watching television and sports and trying to make a dollar just to stay alive. They don't realize what's really going on behind the scenes in our country of America and around the world. There's a very big story here that needs to be told. Who is running this planet and what are they doing to the human race? Not just to America, but the whole human family on the earth is in serious jeopardy, and it is calling into question the very veracity of human freedom. Unless and until we wake up and begin to take back the sovereignty of our own minds, forget about television, forget about all the nonsensical entertainment that we're bombarded with, and begin to start thinking seriously about your life and where you've come from and where you're going and what's going to happen to your children and your grandchildren when you're gone. You had better start waking up and understanding the world we live in is very, very serious trouble. And we need to wake up and understand how the world really works. That's what I hope to help you do. Back in the ancient Greek history, there was a philosopher, I think his name was Socrates, if I'm not mistaken it was Socrates, who eventually the government, the powers that be, shall we say, in the government of that day in ancient Greece, they came to Socrates and they suggested that he might want to do away with himself. They didn't want to have to do it themselves, so they suggested he might want to commit suicide for the good of all the nation. Why? Why was the government so anxious to have Socrates dead and gone? They said that he was corrupting the youth of Greece. He was corrupting the young people. And what was he doing? He was teaching them, he was teaching young people the facts of life, how the world works, to question government, question authority, question with the people around you. Don't just buy into anything because you're ignorant and ill-informed. Question everything. Begin to read and study on your own and begin to question powerful people, powerful governments. And so Socrates began causing young people to think too much. And eventually they had to get rid of him. He was too popular, so the government didn't want to kill him, so they just asked him to do it himself. So the same thing, the more we change, the more we stay the same. Nothing changes, and so there's nothing new under the sun. And so today, just recently, with the the rioting and revolution going on in China, in Tiananmen Square, it was interesting that Henry Kissinger made this statement when this activity was going on in China, when young people were rising up against the government in Tiananmen Square. The news people asked Kissinger what he thought was going on. Why were these young people doing this? And he said, and his comment was that it was tape recordings, cassette tapes were the culprit in causing this uprising and revolution in China. And what he was saying was that young people here and from China who are living here in America, who were enjoying the fruitage of freedom and liberty and justice and education and knowledge, were making tapes, cassette tapes, and sending them back to their friends back home, to young people, their young friends back home, and their young friends back in China were reproducing those tapes. Everybody has a tape recorder, so they were reproducing tapes. And before you know it, all the kids in China were listening to cassette tapes about freedom. liberty, questioning authority, questioning your masters, and questioning who supposedly owns you, and question your decisions in life. And so basically education caused the revolution. So it was a revelation which brought a revolution. And it was all caused by young people sending each other cassette tapes. So the same thing we see, in China, we saw in ancient Greece. When the great philosopher was teaching young people how to think, and they were spreading that message to other young people, what happened? It caused a revolution. And if there's ever been a time in the human race and the history of the human family on the earth that we need an intellectual, spiritual renaissance, we don't need revolutions in the street. It's quite simple. All we actually need, the civilization on the earth needs, is a spiritual and intellectual renaissance. A time when people will begin to hold important knowledge, wisdom, and understanding, questioning authority, questioning the governmental system under which you labor. It's a very important point that knowledge is a basis for power. Let me give you an example. Suppose you have a 2-story building and you're going to put a lot of weight on the second floor. Before you put heavy, like printing presses and all that kind of thing, before you put any heavy weight on the second floor, go downstairs with a ladder and get a building inspector and go up through the ceiling tiles on the first floor and look at the foundation of the second floor to see if it's going to hold that kind of weight. So what you're doing is you're going downstairs, you're going down under the foundation, and you're standing under the foundation to see if the foundation is going to hold that kind of weight. So what you're doing is you're standing under what you're going to build on. That's where we get the word understanding. So unless you are able to go beneath the surface of any subject, you don't understand. And so it's time that you begin to understand the world you live in, how the government really works. It doesn't work the way you think it does. Banks do not loan money. There's a law in America that says no bank can loan money, period. That's the law. Now, how many people go to get a loan from a bank know that the law in America says no banks can loan money? How many people know that? So once you begin to understand that banks don't loan money, I mean, think about it. Just reason for a moment. Suppose I put my $100,000 of my money into a bank, and 2 days later you come in and want to buy a boat for $200,000 or $100,000, and the bank is going to give you my $100,000 to buy your boat. No possible way is that going to happen. Banks do not have the authority to take my money and give it to you. And if you don't pay, then what? I just lost my money because they gave you my money. That's not the way banks work. Banks do not loan money. The way it works is very simple. Suppose you're buying a $30,000 car, $50,000 car. That car, first of all, has to be appraised by a state-approved appraiser. So you have a government appraiser appraise the car for its value. And let's say it's $50,000. Therefore, the paperwork on which that paperwork which represents that $50,000 car is referred to in commerce and business as commercial paper. And that piece of paper represents $50,000 in business. So so what happens is if you decide you want to buy the car, the dealership sends the paper to the bank. So now the bank has a $50,000 worth of commercial paper. What the bank does is they open up a bank account in your name without you knowing it. All banks do this. They open up a bank account in your name. They sign your name on the bank account because you can't open a bank account without a signature. So they sign your name on a bank account and open up a bank account for you. But you don't know that. Then they take the $50,000 in commercial paper, which represents $50,000, and they put it into your account. So now you have a bank account in their bank with $50,000 in it. And then they take that bank account and they write a check on that for you. So the first check for the first $50,000, they write for you, and they sign it for you and give it to you so you can give it to the dealer. So you think that the bank has loaned you $50,000. No. The bank merely gave you credit on the commercial paper which they are holding. They are confirming that they have the $50,000 in the bank with the paper. They're holding the pink slip. Therefore, they will give you a credit of $50,000 based on your commercial paper. So they didn't give you anything. You gave them $50,000 on commercial paper. They just gave you a credit. And so that's the way it works. There is no money changing hands.